He kept me hidden for 2 years. Private jets, luxury hotels, but never his arm at events. Then she walked into his life and changed everything. I watched from the shadows as a black woman's love made this billionaire do what I thought impossible: choose love over legacy. I never thought I'd be sharing this story. For 2 years, I lived in the shadows of a billionaire's life, the woman no one knew existed. You've probably read about him in Forbes or seen his companies mentioned on CNBC, but you never saw me standing beside him. That was the first rule. I couldn't exist in his public world. The private jets, the hidden villas in Monaco, the midnight phone calls, that was our reality. A relationship built in secret corners of the world, where wealth buys not just luxury, but discretion. I accepted it all because I thought what we had was worth it. Maybe I was blinded by the champagne and sunset views from penthouses, or maybe I just couldn't admit what I really was, a secret he was ashamed to share. Stay with me for a journey about hidden love, painful secrets, and the freedom that comes when someone brave enough walks into your life and refuses to play by the rules that kept me caged. This isn't just my story. It might be yours too, if you've ever compromised yourself for someone who wouldn't do the same for you. We met at a charity gala 3 summers ago. I was working as an event coordinator, rushing around making sure everything was perfect, while he stood in a circle of admirers, glass of whiskey in hand. His eyes caught mine across the room. Not a glance, a look that lingered just long enough to make my cheeks flush. Later that night, I found his business card in my clipboard with a handwritten note. "Dinner tomorrow?" That first date was intoxicating. He listened like I was the only person who mattered, not the billionaire tech founder everyone wanted access to, just a man genuinely interested in my dreams. I fell hard and fast, swept away by his intensity and the way he made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. 3 weeks in, he flew us to Paris for breakfast, just because I'd mentioned I loved pastries. The rules came gradually. First, it was, let's keep this between us for now. Then, my board is conservative. They wouldn't understand. Soon, I was signing an NDA, just standard for people in my circle. The excuses were always different, but the message was clear. I was perfect behind closed doors, but not for the public eye. Our relationship existed in carefully curated spaces, private dining rooms with separate entrances, vacation villas with high walls, hotel suites booked under different names. I became an expert at slipping through service entrances and recognizing the quick nod of staff paid well to forget they'd seen me. In those hidden moments, he was loving, present, everything I thought I wanted. I convinced myself it was romantic, our little secret against the world. When he gifted me a diamond bracelet I could never wear in public, I called it intimate instead of isolating. When friends asked why I was always cancelling plans, I'd say I was busy with work, rather than admit I was waiting by the phone for his call. I was living a double life, and slowly losing track of which version of me was real. But God, when it was good, it was magic. And that magic kept me holding on, even as the secret started to suffocate me. By our 1-year anniversary, the shine had started to wear off. I remember sitting alone in a 5-star hotel room in Singapore, surrounded by roses he'd sent, waiting for a call that came 3 hours late. "Emergency board meeting," he explained, sounding genuinely sorry. I believed him because I needed to, but something had shifted inside me. The luxurious cage was still a cage. The questions started piling up in my mind. Why couldn't I meet his friends? Why did he tense up if we ran into someone he knew? Once, we almost bumped into his business partner at a restaurant, and he practically shoved me into the bathroom to hide. I stood there, staring at my reflection under fancy lighting, and didn't recognize the woman looking back. She looked expensive but hollow. "My family is complicated," he'd say. "The media would twist our story. And the one that cut deepest, you wouldn't be comfortable in my world anyway." But what he really meant was, I'm not comfortable with you in my world. The truth was in the details, how he'd scroll through social media showing off gorgeous, accomplished women on the arms of his peers, then look at me differently. I wasn't from his world of old money and prestigious connections. I was the girl who coordinated events, not the one who got invited to them. The fight started small but grew. I just want to hold your hand in public, I'd say, and somehow that simple request would spiral into him reminding me of everything he provided, as if the private jets and designer clothes were a fair trade for my invisibility. We broke up twice that year. Both times, I swore I was done. Both times, he appeared at my apartment with tears in his eyes and promises that things would change when the timing was right. I'd like to say I was stronger, that I demanded more. But the truth? Each time I went back, a little more of my self-respect slipped away. I'd built my life around stolen moments with him, turning down job opportunities that might make me less available, drifting away from friends who asked too many questions. I was shrinking myself to fit into the tiny space he'd allocated for me in his life. I first saw her at the World Economic Forum coverage online. I wasn't supposed to be there. Too public, too many cameras. So I was watching from my apartment, scanning the crowd for glimpses of him. That's when the camera panned to a panel discussion. She was speaking, confident, brilliant, unapologetic. A tech founder herself who'd built a sustainable energy company from scratch. The camera kept cutting to the audience, and there he was, leaning forward in his seat, completely captivated. I recognized that look. It was how he used to look at me. I told myself I was imagining things. He wasn't interested. He was just impressed by a fellow entrepreneur. But that night, our phone call was shorter than usual. He seemed distracted. When I asked about the forum, he mentioned interesting panels, but nothing about her. My stomach knotted with intuition, but I pushed it away. 2 weeks later, I was sitting at our favorite hidden restaurant waiting. 45 minutes late, he finally arrived, distracted and checking his phone. I'd seen this behavior before, when deals were closing or markets were shifting. But this felt different. I scrolled through my phone while he was in the bathroom and saw it. A business news article about potential collaboration between their companies. The photo showed them together at a meeting, professional but standing too close. Her eyes held something familiar, that same intoxication I'd felt when we first met. Over the next month, I became a detective in my own relationship. I tracked industry events they both attended. I scrutinized his mood shifts, his suddenly busy schedule. When he'd fall asleep, I'd check his phone, something I'd never done before and hated myself for doing now. There were text messages, professional, but with an undercurrent of something more. The way they wrote to each other had an electricity that was undeniable. I confronted him one night in Bali, in the private villa he'd rented for just us. He denied everything, of course. She's a business associate, an important one. But his eyes gave him away. That slight aversion of gaze that I'd learned meant he wasn't telling the whole truth. I didn't push it. I was too afraid of what pushing might reveal. Instead, I clung harder, became more accommodating, more available. I was fighting for something that was already slipping through my fingers. It happened at the annual Tech Innovation Awards 3 months later. I wasn't there, obviously. I was never there. But I watched the live stream from home like I always did. He was nominated for Visionary of the Year. The camera kept finding him in the audience, and my heart clenched seeing him in that tuxedo I'd helped him choose. Then, something impossible happened. The camera angle widened, and she was sitting beside him. Not across the room, not as a fellow industry leader. She was literally by his side, her hand casually resting on his arm. I stopped breathing. This wasn't just a public appearance. This was him breaking every rule he'd established with me, the rules that had shaped my entire existence for 2 years. My phone lit up with messages from mutual acquaintances. Are you seeing this? The world was witnessing what I couldn't process. He had chosen someone he wasn't ashamed to be seen with. The next morning, it was official. Every business publication carried the story. Tech billionaire debuts relationship with clean energy pioneer. I read each article obsessively, searching for clues about when it started, what made her different. One quote gutted me. "I've never felt this kind of connection before," he told the reporter. "Some people come into your life and fundamentally change how you see everything." I didn't hear from him for a week. When he finally called, his voice was different, lighter somehow. "We need to talk," he said. We met at a private airstrip, and for the first time, he looked uncomfortable in his luxury. He explained that she had refused to be hidden from day one. "I'm not interested in being anyone's secret," she'd told him. "Either you're proud to be with me, or you're not with me at all." What killed me wasn't that he'd chosen her, it was that he'd transformed for her. His family had apparently objected, citing traditional expectations and appropriate matches. 2 board members had threatened to resign over concerns about company image. And yet, he stood firm. For her, he was willing to face everything he'd convinced me we needed to hide from. "She made me realize I've been living by other people's rules," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to do that for us." In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity. It had never been about protecting our relationship from the world. It had been about his shame. And somewhere along the way, I had accepted that I was something to be ashamed of. The weeks after our final goodbye were the darkest of my life. I moved through existence like a ghost, haunted by their pictures in magazines, their interviews where they talked about knowing immediately that they'd found something special. Each headline felt like it was written specifically to torture me. The diamond bracelet he'd given me, the one I could never wear in public, sat in its box like evidence of everything I'd settled for. Rock bottom came 3 months later. I was scrolling through social media at 2 a.m. and saw them at the Met Gala. She was radiant in a gown designed by a black designer from her hometown, proudly representing her heritage and her story. He looked at her with unguarded adoration, his hand publicly claiming hers. Something broke in me that night, but breaks can be beginnings too. I deleted every photo, blocked every account that might show me their life, and booked a one-way ticket to Thailand. Not because I was running away, but because I'd always wanted to travel there, and he'd always said it didn't fit our privacy requirements. For 6 weeks, I reconnected with myself. I wrote every morning, hiked mountains, ate street food without worrying about being photographed, and slowly remembered who I was before I became someone's secret. When I returned, I enrolled in business school, something I'd put off when our relationship became all-consuming. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, confessing everything and crying through their anger and concern. "We missed you," my best friend said. "It's like you disappeared into his world." She was right. I had disappeared, and not just from public view. The strangest part of healing was realizing I felt grateful toward her. This woman I'd never met but had obsessively hated. She had refused to shrink herself, to hide her light, to play by rules designed to diminish her. In doing so, she hadn't just changed him, she'd indirectly forced me to face how much I'd compromised myself. A year later, I saw them at a distance, entering a restaurant I was leaving. They didn't notice me, but I noticed something. They looked real together, laughing, connected, equals. I felt no jealousy, just a quiet recognition. She hadn't won him from me. She'd simply refused to accept what I had, and in doing so, she'd set us both free. That night, I went home to my apartment, my name on the lease, decorated with treasures from my travels, filled with books and plans for my future business. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was missing something by being alone. I was no longer waiting for someone to decide I was enough to claim publicly. I had finally claimed myself. Looking back now, 3 years later, I realize that being someone's secret wasn't something that happened to me. It was something I allowed. Every time I accepted the shadows, I was telling myself that's where I belonged. Today, my life is unrecognizable from those days. I run my own event planning agency, specializing in platforms for women entrepreneurs. Sometimes I see them in the news. They got married last spring, and she's changing the renewable energy landscape. I wish them well, genuinely. What parts of yourself are you hiding? Who are you letting define your worth? Maybe it's not a billionaire boyfriend. Maybe it's a job that diminishes you, a friend who keeps you small, or your own fear of taking up space. Your freedom starts when you stop living in someone else's shadows. Share this story if it touched you, and remember, true love, whether from others or yourself, won't ask you to disappear. It will invite you to shine brighter than you ever thought possible.